East Hampton Town Board, we are live.
Thank you, Jason, and welcome everyone to the East Hampton Town Board work session of July 9th, 2025. We're in Montauk today. I welcome everyone here. As you can see, Supervisor Gonzalez is not with us this morning. She is with the East Hampton Housing Authority, interviewing potential firms for the design and build of the Route 114 moderate income housing development. So we'll soldier on without her today. Carol, would you do the roll call, please?
Councilmember Flight?
Present.
Councilmember Lease?
Present.
Councilmember Rogers?
Present.
Councilmember Calder Piedmont?
Present.
Supervisor Burke?
Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have three topics today on the agenda. The first is Natural Resources Inventory Grant Application by Tina Legaren and Sam Klein. The second is the Salt Marsh Barrows in Accabonac Harbor presentation by Brian Frank. And the third is Concerned Citizens of Montauk, Save Montauk's Water Campaign with Kay Tyler and Rebecca Holloway. But as usual in work sessions, we begin with the public portion. Carol, do we have anyone signed up?
I do not.
Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak in public portion today? Okay, Jason, do we have anyone on the line?
We have no callers on the line.
Thank you. One more chance for the room? Okay, thank you all. So we'll move on to our topics. The first one being, as I said, Natural Resources Inventory Grant Application. Tina and Sam, if you'd like to come to the podium and present, and Anne Marie is going to run the presentation. You can begin, Sam.
Yep. So Tina and I are here to discuss a proposed grant application to the Department of Environmental Conservation's Climate Smart Communities Grant Program to develop a natural resources inventory. So we're going to start with some information on the grant opportunity itself, talk about what a natural resources inventory is, and describe the project team working on this. Then you'll be hearing from Tina, the town's planning director, on the project's need and purpose, so speaking to why we are pursuing this, as well as the project's goals and anticipated tasks to reach those goals. At the end, you'll hear from me again to just go over a brief rundown of some paperwork and timelines to ensure the town submits a competitive application by the deadline. Next slide. Great, thank you. The planning department has been interested in completing a natural resources inventory, or NRI, for a little while, and this year the DC has a specific program to support NRIs with competitive grant funding. The grant opportunity is available under the Consolidated Funding Application, which is a centralized funding opportunity that releases 16 programs from 8 different agencies, with almost all of them having the same application window of a deadline of July 31st. So one of the programs applicable to NRIs is the DEC's Climate Smart Communities Grant Program. They fund certification projects. The town has completed and received recognized approval for over 30 certification projects. So we received a bronze designation status in that program. The DEC considers applications for about a dozen action items within that program, one of which is completing an NRI, which the town hasn't done as a standalone project yet. This is going to be a highly competitive grant program, and so we're proposing a very robust project to meet the goals of both the town and the state. The awards range from $10,000 to $200,000 with a match requirement of 50% of the total project cost. The planning department is working on estimating the total project costs. We've also reached out to consultants to help us with that cost. We believe it's going to be in the range of $150,000 to $175,000. We are going to be leveraging staff time to meet the match requirement of in-kind services. The reason for that is to minimize any monetary contributions from the town, so that way we're just using our town staff hours instead of an actual cash amount. The staff will help with data collection and review, field work, management of hired consultants, management and administration of the grant itself, and supervision of a project advisory committee. Next slide. So an NRI maps and describes the natural resources in a community, providing a foundation for municipal land use and conservation planning. So as I stated before, this can be a standalone project or a part of another plan. So the town currently has elements of a natural resources inventory within our LWRP, but that only covers coastal areas, whereas this would be townwide. So we would be filling any information gaps. As we all know, we are a coastal community, so the LWRP does cover a lot of information, but this would be supplementing that as well as updating it, because the LWRP is over 20 years old. Let me see. So we are going to be updating and expanding the existing information and collating it into a data repository with maps that can be shared across town departments as well as made available to the public. We'll also consider how climate change may impact habitats, such as influxes of invasive species like the southern pine beetle, nutrient load in water bodies. Tina's going to discuss more in a moment about the town's proposed scope specific to what we're trying to do. But ultimately, the NRI will be a planning resource to guide climate smart land use. So in any proposed project, it's important to have an administrative capacity plan outlined and written into the grant application as well. So this is our project team that we're anticipating if we're awarded. So it's going to include the planning department, hired consultants, the grants division, as well as a project advisory committee. So the planning department is going to be the project's lead from the town, handling day-to-day operations of the project, management of the hired consultants, coordination of the advisory committee, as well as participating in the actual task items of the scope. The grant funds are going to be used to hire professional consultants. That's going to be through a competitive process with the purpose to accomplish our scope and deliver the NRI. A project advisory committee is going to be formed, and it's going to include relevant town departments and environmental or community organizations outside of the town that can lend expertise to this project, but also kind of expand how our project can influence other municipalities, other organizations by giving us more exposure on the project. And then my role in the grants division will be to serve as a point of contact with the grant agency, assist in reporting project milestones and challenges, and as needed, assist with reimbursement requests or contract amendments. All right, so now I'm going to pass off to Tina, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the details of why we're doing this project and the tests.
Thank you, Sam. Hello, board members. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about this today. There are several.
Would you just introduce yourself to
I'm sorry.
everyone?
Tina Lagaran, Planning Director. There are several drivers contributing to our need for a natural resources inventory. Sam gave a broad view that I'll expand on a little more. When we're considering natural resources implications for planning and development projects, we rely heavily on field work, as well as existing GIS data sets, and then older reports and online resources. Reports such as the LWRP that Sam mentioned have good data, but they're older, focus only on coastal habitat communities, and do not reflect the realities of climate change that we're starting to see as prominently as they could. There's also the Natural Heritage Program, another great data source, but it's focused on state-owned lands, and there's large gaps. A more specific and targeted example of the data we work with and why we want to update it's on this slide. You can see a picture of the wetland mapping that we have internally. This shows a larger wetland system that's only partially mapped, as shown in the areas in green and blue. One of the purposes of this project would be to help us estimate actual wetland boundaries to serve as a better planning tool. Now, site-specific wetland delineations are always going to be necessary, like nothing town-wide at that scale is going to be 100% accurate, but having a more complete data set is going to be a good resources for first-level planning and for public awareness of where natural resources are located close to their properties or on their properties. So collecting these data sets, updating them, and creating data to address where gaps need to be plugged is going to give us a powerful planning tool that's going to facilitate our ability to view our policies and programs in a comprehensive natural resources context and facilitate our ability to act appropriately within that context. So on the next slide, just continuing to talk about need, one of the primary things we're going to be doing is helping to characterize habitats at a town level that are not currently characterized, at least at a broad level. And one of the purposes of doing this is really to focus on the climate resiliency of the habitats. What are the risks to the habitat and the species that rely on them, and what are the mitigation strategies that we should be ready to deploy to address those risks? For example, Sam mentioned the pine beetle and the devastation that brought with it. Is there another disaster like that looming? And if so, how do we plan for it and be ready for it? And how do we continue to manage the pine beetle? On the next slide, this shows some pretty ambitious goals that we've set for the project. We want to create a comprehensive GIS data repository, a comprehensive report on natural resources, and we hope this will serve as a comprehensive centralized clearinghouse for natural resources data to support all different types of planning efforts in the town. We are going to seek to engage the public and conduct outreach to guide the scope of the study and, of course, to share the findings. We are also going to use this as an opportunity to provide public education about the town's natural resources. Another key goal we are setting is to ensure the information gathered gives us actionable strategies and lives through recommendations to our policy documents and changes in town code. So we intend for the NRI to recommend updates to the comprehensive plan for natural resources policy and for conservation strategies. Conservation programs and habitat management plans or needs for those plans should also be an outgrowth of the effort. On the next slide are the kind of high-level tasks that we've outlined to meet all the goals I've discussed. Early in the process, we're going to form a project advisory committee or PAC. We are hoping to invite local experts, other town departments to participate in the committee, and then we'll engage them regularly throughout the process of developing the NRI. They will help inform project objectives that I talked about today, help us focus the scope, review our methodologies, and help make sure the report is focused on information that's most useful to us as the town as well as the community as a whole. The PAC is also going to help inform a public engagement plan, which will include outreach to residents, nonprofits, and land use professionals in the private sector to seek input from all different perspectives. The tasks following from there, and I've touched on most of them already, so just briefly, we'll collect information, identify gaps, work to plug the gaps using a combination of field work, aerial imagery, and other studies. We're also going to try to look at habitat change over time, probably looking at about a 20-year span and see how the town has fared from a natural resources perspective. I think it's important we understand the trends that we're seeing in order to inform what trends we want to see in the future. And the report will be created, of course, it will be publicly available and contain the findings of all the studies, and will include sections to reflect natural resources conservation policies and updates to code that are recommended through the plan. We do already have stringent code for natural resources protection. We will be looking at how they may need to be strengthened or adjusted to effectively regulate and provide for resource conservation in the context of the information that the NRI provides. We do finally also plan to include some public education materials, and we have included in the tasks the creation of 2 flyers to serve as education tools for residents. Right now, for example, if people want to understand the natural permit process, the natural resources special permit process, excuse me, they have to read our code, and it's a quite dense and technical document, and it doesn't explain the process from start to finish. We would provide education materials that explain why is a permit needed, when's a permit needed, and then what are the steps to get from here to there, to help people understand it at a very high level and facilitate, why we have these programs in place, a wider understanding of that. So with that, I will finish up and hand it back to Sam.
Thank you, Tina.
Okay. So we are going to spend the rest of this month gathering required documents for the application, as well as answering the application questions. While doing this, we're going to be closely matching our project goals and scope with the grant agency's priorities and their scoring criterion. So that way we develop a very competitive application. These do receive a high volume of applicants, and not receiving an award shouldn't negatively reflect on the project's need or purpose. There's a lot of merit in developing an application in general, and we may be able to receive some constructive feedback on elements of our proposal, regardless of being funded or not. It's no small feat to submit an application. This one has 7 required documents. Some of those are smaller signatures. Others are more comprehensive things about our budget plan and our scope of work. And then there are 60 questions on this application too. They generally cover topics of how critical the project is, the effectiveness of the project leading to implementation actions, the context of the project being supported by other plans or recommended by local committees, reasonableness of the costs, and implementation readiness of, if we get the funds, do we have a plan, the people in place to make sure that it actually goes through successfully. If the town board is supportive of our application being submitted, we'll be putting on a resolution for next week to authorize this using language provided to us by the DC. We are in the process of gathering letters of support. Those are always great in demonstrating that our project isn't just important for the municipality itself, but also to other interested stakeholders or organizations. We also have some internal deadlines we're working on as well of paperwork processes that we follow for transparency and kind of a checklist of doing things. Overall, the application is due on July 31st. However, we are aiming to submit it on the 29th. The CFA portal is used by all of New York State, and this has 16 programs all due on the same day. So just in the interest of anything crashing, we are trying to submit 2 days ahead of time. But we're confident in reaching this deadline. We would know if we're awarded or not in late November. Contracts for the grant awards are expected to roll out a few months following that. Upon receiving a contract, the town would have to develop an RFP and go out for a competitive selection of a consultant. So we're not looking at starting the project, if awarded, until probably this time next year, maybe even going into late 2026. So I think that's everything we have.
Thank you, Sam. Board members, Tom, do you want to start off?
Yeah, thank you. Sam, Tina, thank you very much. I mean, I think just stepping back and taking the 20,000-foot view, I think it's a great concept. Our environment is obviously a driver of our economy, and understanding what we have here is critical to what we kind of prioritize to preserve and what our future strategy is for doing so. I think one thing that I'll start off, from the very base, I guess. I mean, is this going to include any analysis of soil and water bodies other than those which we currently have? Because obviously, as habitats, those do, and in terms of what can grow, our soil kind of types are critical as well. Related to that, the evolution of the invasives. When you're doing the inventory, you might find the absence of some plants, for example, when I was up at the exclosure up in Northwest Woods, you have sassafras growing in there, but you don't get that elsewhere in our woodlands because the deer destroy it as soon as it kind of pops up. So, how would that be accounted for, the species that have been unable to kind of come up in our inventory here, and what might be the most beneficial to our environment here? My other thoughts here as well would just be, obviously Andy Gates did the excellent town version of the States of the Forests out here. The incorporation of that as much as possible, going back to sassafras, I think would be very helpful. It's something I'm very supportive of. I think it's a great concept. I think if we're going to make good decisions, having good data that underlies that is critical. I just kind of want to make sure we're really getting as deep as we can on this, which is why I go back to the point about the soil and the water bodies, because understanding what our soil types are and what the health of the soils is, I think would be critical in terms of, what the flora and fauna come up with.
Tina?
So the work plan we put together does have a draft outline of the NRI, and it would include, what watershed mapping we have, what soils, geology information we have, slopes, right? One of the things this is really trying to do, we do have a lot of data, and we want to really bring it together in a way that becomes a more powerful decision-making tool than having things in different places or incomplete information. So definitely that would be part of the scope. And I agree, it is an important piece of the puzzle in understanding the broader picture. In terms of the detail of the habitat characterizations, that's an interesting thing that we've focused a lot about, while we're trying to plan this grant. And it's something we definitely want the PAC to inform the thinking on. We will not be able to do field work that does detailed characterizations of the town, in its total, because it would just be too expensive. But we do want to pick key areas to do those characterizations, areas that will allow us to make broader characterizations of the habitat and see what's going on. So I'm sure we will pick areas in Northwest Woods to kind of examine, okay, what is happening with the woodlands over time. So, I think we will address that, and how detailed we get is really something we'll work with the experts once we convene the PAC to dive into.
Great. Thank you.
So to add on to what Tom was saying, I think he was talking about the deer exclosure, and Tom recently visited there, maybe with the Wildlife Management Committee. I think that's been up for about 3 years, and we've been looking to put in different deer exclosures into different locations in different environmental settings. That one was more of in a woodland setting up there. God bless you. But it was one going to be in the maritime forest, one going to be the duneland forest, to see what deer browse has done to some of our vegetation and it's pretty significant as you saw there. And Mashonack Preserve, I think they did 2 hectares. We did a 1/4 acre to try to show that. So it'd be very interesting to potentially, if there is an add-on to this in a later time, to bring it back to it. But going forward to the mechanisms of the grant, a CFA grant does not mean that by applying one, that you're going to receive it. And I know that your department, specifically looking at Brian here, has been requesting some of this for a long, long time. I think it's very wise of the department to move forward in a consolidation of all the information there, to put it forward, because it does help the residents know when they're planning, prospectively planning some of their projects, what some of the faunas and triggers might be for different regulations that the town might have. Last year, I know we applied for a CFA grant that wasn't successful, but Sam, thank you for your time and effort. And that was for cemetery restoration, the South End Cemetery. Kate, you were very successful with your coastal communities grant that is moving forward also. And I believe we also received a CFA grant that was $600,000. We received one for $400,000 for the aquaculture department's consolidation project a bunch of years back. We're still moving on then too. So just trying to manage expectations on there. We applied for it, we might not know, but those letters of support, there are people here listening, are very helpful on that, because it's a very highly competitive grant. Moving that ahead, there's a match to this. And the match, you said by staff hour, did they say what the match was going to be financially, or is it just through staff hours?
So it's 50% of the total project cost. So we're thinking the cost might be in the range of $150,000 to $175,000. So it would have to be that equivalent of staff hours. And we use an hourly rate with our fringe. So different employees have different rates.
which is a lot of time for the department also, but I think very valuable also. And that's something I would support then too. So I think what you're asking right now is you put a lot of effort into it. I think it's a strong application based on what the town already has and a lot of its comp plans and such. It will put our regulatory boards in a better footing to defend litigation against that, and also to write applications that are super strong, super strong, shouldn't say super, but that are justified on there. And if you're looking for the okay to move forward, it's a definite from me too. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Ian?
Yeah, I'm certainly supportive as well. I would reiterate the comments of the previous council members. And Tina, I appreciate a big part of this, and Sam, is to take the existing information and bring it in one place so that we can be more efficient in our decision-making and consistent. I think there's a lot of information, a lot that's already been done, but to have that all in one place so that when we're analyzing our natural resources, we know where to look. And obviously, that'll lead to filling in gaps as well. So I'm supportive. I think our natural resources are amongst the most important things of our town. They keep it beautiful, keep it thriving, and so I look forward to see where this goes.
Thank you. I'm totally supportive, as you know. I think this has been on the radar for quite a long time. It'll modernize our system as well. And our natural resources are impacted, and we need to have an in-depth look of how they've been impacted and correlate that data so that we know that moving forward. As far as grants, as you know, the state has said, please apply for an update to your 20-year-old LWRP. And if all the folks who put their time into that LWRP, we're one of the few towns that have it, we wouldn't have accessed any of these other grants. So we all know how important all of these pieces are to the overall health of looking after our natural resources. I am really pleased to see in the draft actionable strategies. So whenever we do these studies now, I think we've done so many studies in the past that we completed them, we were excited about them, but what were the actionable deliverables that we could make definitive changes? And now including that in your strategy is excellent. And lastly, I'll just say that it's really nice to get the grants. If you don't ask, you don't get, as Kathy frequently says. But also, it makes me happy to bring some of our hard-earned tax dollars back into the town in one way or another, because we fund all of this, right, ultimately. So I thank you for your work on this, and I'm a definite yes as well.
And just knowing that we've applied for grants in the past, the 29th might be a little late. You might want to try to get in there earlier if you can, and if you're prepared with a strong application, then too, knowing that that portal has crashed in the past too. But you're very aware of that too.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think there are, I don't know, there might be a seat or two if you're standing. We have quite a packed house today, which is great to see with these important environmental presentations on the board. So next we'll move into the Salt Marsh Sparrows and Accabonac Harbor presentation, another one dear to my heart. And Brian Frank is presenting. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Anne Marie.
Good morning, board members. Brian Frank, Assistant Planning Director. I'm going to be up here very briefly. I'm going to really introduce the real expert, but to kind of set the stage a little bit, as I'm sure the board knows, salt marshes are among the most productive and important habitats on the planet. They are up there with coral reefs and rainforest in terms of biodiversity, carbon sequestration, nursery areas for important species of shellfish and finfish that we harvest. Indirectly, they support a myriad of other life species. They help buffer our shoreline from wave action and protect against erosion. And they're really a jewel. Accabonac Harbor has been described as the Jewel of Springs, and it's a great example of one of our local salt marshes. And the marshes are under pressure right now, up and down the East Coast, between rising sea levels and often historic manipulations that have kind of changed the hydrology of a natural marsh, there is marsh subsidence. So the water levels are rising, and in some cases, the marshes are simultaneously sinking, and that spells trouble in the long term. The planning department has had the privilege of being invited to participate with a group of experts since 2022. The Nature Conservancy has been a big hub for that. The workshops have been hosted at the Conservancy's office. They've involved fieldwork out on Accabonac Harbor, again dating back to 2022. The most recent was just this spring in May. It has grown to include elected members of East Hampton's Board of Trustees. At this most recent workshop, there were representatives there from the Peconic Estuary Program, New York State Sea Grant, and our own county legislator and Welker attended for at least one of the days in this program. Part of the reason that we're here today is to discuss the role of the salt marsh sparrow and how the sparrow's life cycle is an indicator of marsh health. And with that, I'd like to introduce the real expert to share with you what's been going on in Accabonac and a request involving banding, and that's Dr. Nicole Marr from the Nature Conservancy.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Mayer.
Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you, town board members, and all of you for your interest in being here today. I'll build on what Brian so perfectly described as a sort of restoration assessment and project that's been building in Accabonac Harbor since a group that I'll introduce called the SMART Teams started looking at the marsh in Accabonac Harbor in 2022. But I've actually been measuring how the marsh in Accabonac Harbor is keeping up with sea level rise since 2008. And the news there is that it's not keeping up, but we have the opportunity to switch that elevation trajectory from negative to positive because we've learned that it's sort of the way the plants are growing. And so fixing the hydrology, fixing the way water comes into and out of the harbor and the growing conditions for the plants can really set this jewel of Accabonac Harbor on the right trajectory for the future. So do I advance slides from here? Or?
Anne-Marie will help you.
Oh, nice. Thank you. So been working with a group of experts called the SMART Teams, and that's an acronym that stands for Salt Marsh Adaptation Resiliency Teams. And these are a partnership of practitioners, scientists, agency personnel working together to develop holistic restoration approaches that restore hydrology by working with nature to improve the resilience of tidal marshes impacted by relict agricultural features. And this is an appreciation that we have only recently developed, that the first time that we people manipulated the way water moved into and out of our salt marshes was not when the linear mosquito ditches were done, but back starting in the 1600s. Accabonac Harbor was a big sort of agricultural center especially for cattle. And the more we look, the more we can see sort of the remnants of those manipulations that were made then. And that made the marshes really valuable to the people of Springs then because they could increase the productivity of the salt hay and grow English hay for their livestock, but also grow probably we're still looking for some of the history on growing vegetables for human consumption and definitely raising cattle. There are still remnants of the embankments and some of the log roads that are out in Accabonac from that time. And so with this appreciation, we can do restoration of the natural processes in the harbor by sort of restoring the way water moves into and out of these systems. The next slide. So the goals for the restoration in Accabonac Harbor are multiple. They're to efficiently restore ecosystem function, change that elevation trajectory from negative to positive so the marsh can keep up with sea level rise, to facilitate marsh migration so that the marsh can persist into the future, and something that's probably very important to many of you in the room, to reduce the mosquito production and pesticide application in the harbor, to support at-risk wildlife species like the salt marsh sparrow that we'll talk about today, and promote climate adaptation. Forward. So the screen is a little small for everyone in this room to see, but we are working to develop light touch restoration approaches for all of the publicly accessible portions of Accabonac Harbor that are color-coded in this map here, with the properties in red are owned by the town of East Hampton, in blue by the Nature Conservancy, in yellow by Suffolk County, and that tiny little mitten-shaped parcel in the bottom, in the lower southeastern corner, New York State DEC. And so there are lots of wonderful reasons to restore the natural function of this harbor so that it can continue to provide all of those services that Brian detailed, including fueling our coastal food web and supporting wildlife species, attenuating wave energy, cycling our nutrients, filtering our water, and providing long-term support for wildlife. And so that's what I want to focus on today. Accabonac Harbor, the list that I have here that's a little hard to read is that, Accabonac Harbor has a lot going for it in terms of the support of the people, the agencies around it, and the Monday morning mosquito samplers that are led by, I think I have them on the next slide, have really informed a lot of the way that natural processes are functioning in the harbor. Here's a picture of a Monday morning mosquito sampler. All of those red dots on the map are places where these brave volunteers went out and dipped for mosquito larvae so that they could, in real time, map where mosquitoes were breeding and communicate that to Suffolk County Vector Control in real time so that their spray decisions each week could be informed by data on the ground. And by doing this, they were able to reduce the amount of pesticide sprayed and the frequency of spraying and the acreages that they sprayed by up to 90%, because just having that real-time data with the input of these brave volunteers who went out really early on Monday mornings really dramatically reduced the pesticide spraying. It saved the county tens of thousands of dollars. It increased the transparency between residents and the county vector control and how they were making their decisions. And so already that program has been a huge success. But something else that it did is it revealed that there are still some persistent mosquito breeding hotspots in the upper reaches of the marsh that have now are being formed because of relict agricultural embankments. And so those persistent hotspots that still produce mosquitoes are informing our designs for the restoration plans that we will put before the board in the coming months. The next slide. And one character who really depends on us getting this right is the salt marsh sparrow. So these tiny little brown songbirds are endemic to the east coast of the US. They exist nowhere else in the world. They breed up here in northern marshes in the summer, and then they overwinter in marshes on the south coast of the US in the winter. And they are such extreme tidal salt marsh specialists, they even build their nests in the intertidal zone. And so they've got evolutionary adaptations that allow them to do this, one of which is that the pores on the eggshell are really fine. So unlike the chicken eggs that you buy at the store from your backyard chickens, these eggs can actually be immersed in salt water for a couple hours and still survive. So as long as the tide doesn't come up so high that it pushes the eggs up over the cup of the nest, the eggs can survive that tidal inundation. So they build their nest, they cue in on the species of grasses in the marsh that should tell them how frequently that area floods. And they tend to build their marshes and their nests in what we call the high marsh. So the part of the marsh that typically gets flooded just at new moons and full moons. So those what we call spring high tides. But things are getting harder for the birds, and their populations are declining across their entire range. In fact, there's only one population of salt marsh sparrows that are keeping their population steady, and that's off the coast of Chatham, Massachusetts on Monomoy Island. Everywhere else in their whole range, their numbers are decreasing. But here in Accabonac Harbor, we're fortunate we have successful breeding populations of sparrows, so we have an opportunity to help them be more successful here in Accabonac. Let's see what I have on the next slide. Oh, so yes. So we have a breeding population of sparrows here in Accabonac Harbor. Over the last few years, we've been netting and banding and releasing these birds on TNC-owned properties. And this little chick was from the Merrill Lake Sanctuary, where it's actually netting this morning. This chick we captured and banded 2 years ago. And this is really sort of great sort of proof that Accabonac Harbor is a successful marsh for these birds. And because they are such specialists, success for these birds is a really good indicator of success of all of the other things we want our marshes to do for us, whether it's sequestering carbon, cycling nutrients, attenuating wave energy, et cetera. So we like to say that these sparrows are the canary in the coal mine. And so you can see that this is a hatchling bird from 2023 because of those yellow lines on its beak, so that when it opens its mouth in its nest, there's like a yellow target that tells the mommy bird, put food here. So next slide. So this morning, while waiting for slides to advance, we caught 5 birds this morning. One of them was a recapture, it was a male, and the other 3 were males that we had not captured before.
You want to scroll through this one? You can talk to it. If it helps you.
Oh, sure, okay. I got it. Sliding.
I got it.
All right, so we'll talk more about the tidal, thank you very much. Tidal marsh field work that we're doing in Accabonac Harbor. You can slide to the next. Great, so this slide actually captures something I had said before. This is their entire range on the entire globe, from Maine down around the coast of Florida. And in green, where we are here on Long Island, they are breeding here in the summer, and then they overwinter on marshes in the south. And they're so site specific that if a female bird is successful with her nest in Accabonac Harbor, the next year she'll return and she will build her nest within a couple meters of that same spot. And if she wasn't successful, she'll still come back to Accabonac Harbor and look around and try a new spot. You can go to the next slide. That's one reason why when we're putting on these bands, it's like giving them bracelets with unique ID numbers. When they're caught again, we can figure out who they are, how old they are, where they've been. Great. So this cartoon shows sort of some of those specifics, how specific the salt marsh sparrow breeding and nesting cycle is to the tides. So the bars that go up and down are sort of a month-long tidal cycle. So you can see the highest high tides happen at the new moon and at the full moon. And these birds have evolved so that they need just 23 days between those highest high tides. That's enough time, as long as we don't get a storm event in there, for them to lay a clutch of eggs and then hatch and fledge those chicks. We go to the next slide. So this is a movie. I don't know if you click on that, will it play the movie?
Not sure.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so. I think it's a PDF on us, so yeah.
I will describe it to you, and I can send a video, the movie, to the board members. So this is a nest in an salt marsh in Connecticut that my research partner, Dr. Sam Apgar, found and filmed. You can see there are 4 little eggs in that nest, and you can start to see there's already water in that nest. The movie is over a few hours, but it's sped up so that you can see it in less than a minute. The water comes up, the eggs float and bob around, but the water doesn't come up so much that it pushes the eggs out of the nest. And within 5 minutes of the tide receding, mommy bird comes back, sits on the eggs, and all of them survive. So we can go to the here. You can slide through this. This is just sort of walking through. It doesn't work as well if it isn't animated. So how the life cycle, and you go to the next one. So here, the point of that graphic was just that our climate models, habitat models, and population models for these birds all say that they could be extinct by as early as the 2030s or by the 2050s. And so what we're trying to do is figure out where they're being successful. Can our light touch restoration approaches to fixing the natural processes in the marsh help these birds be more successful into the future? So the specific restoration questions we're asking are salt marsh sparrows present and breeding at the site? And at Accabonac Harbor, we already know that, yes, on the TNC-owned properties at Kaplan Meadows in the north and Merrill Lake Sanctuary in the central part of the harbor, they are breeding, and 2 years ago, we caught chicks at each of those sites. And where are they breeding? So recently, when one of the workshops that Brian described, where we had folks who are thinking about restoration and Accabonac out, they were at the East Hampton town properties just south of Girard Drive in the northern part of the harbor. And Brian and a few others spotted some salt marsh sparrows there flitting around. So we would like to go out there and net to catch those birds, take some measurements on them, put some bracelets on them with ID numbers so that we can follow them and see if they're successfully breeding on the East Hampton town marsh properties too. Slide up. So region-wide questions about these birds is, do they return to previously unoccupied marsh sites? So if the site has deteriorated to the point where it can't support birds, we want to know, are the birds still exploring to say, did it get better yet? Can I go back there? And having these ID bands on them and mist netting in various places, we'll be able to track where the birds are. And then, does salt marsh sparrow productivity increase after restoration? This is something we're really hoping for, that if we can restore the natural processes in the habitat in the salt marsh in Accabonac Harbor, can we increase the productivity of the birds and the population that's already there? And based on which restoration techniques and how long does it take? Next. So you can slide the next slide. This would have animated. The netting that we do takes only 3 hours, and we do it 2 times in a season. And this is, we know that even just doing that little amount of sampling can give us a lot more information, because there were graduate students in Connecticut who went out and followed nests and would go out and monitor nests every couple days for a whole year, for a number of years. And this is a statistically significant relationship between the number of birds, the females and chicks that we collect within just 3 hours of mist netting them, relates to the daily nest survival and probability of survival of the population, so that we don't have to do that really intensive sampling to get the information that we're after, just the 3-hour-long netting sessions. So next. This shows a map of the priority and honorable mention sites across Long Island, and you see some of the shore of Connecticut that the Atlantic Coast Joint Venture and Fish and Wildlife Service have identified as priority habitats for the salt marsh sparrow, and Accabonac Harbor on there, as well as Napeague State Park Marsh, are on the top priority list. You can slide to next. These are some of the groups that have put together the monitoring protocols for monitoring the birds. Ducks Unlimited, SHARP is the Salt Marsh Habitat Avian Research Program based out of Connecticut. I actually don't recognize that note. That must be the Atlantic Coast Joint Venture logo, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Next one. So these are the different levels of intensity of sampling. You can just go out and sort of look with binoculars and you can see if there are birds there or not, but because the males and females look the same, you can't tell if you're seeing both males and females on the site or if you're seeing just males. So the next level of intensity is watching for longer and seeing if the birds carry insects or fecal sacs. It's like taking out the dirty diaper from the nest. Then you know that the birds are breeding and that there are chicks in the nest. What's interesting about sparrows is that some other birds will sort of collect insects or nest material and show it off to potential mates as sort of part of a courting behavior. But in salt marsh sparrows, only the females build the nests and only the females feed the chicks. So if you see a salt marsh sparrow carrying a spider in the marsh and flying it to a nest, you know she's got chicks, which is great. And then, so mist netting to count the number of females and juveniles you catch in 3 hours is the next level of effort to get sampling data. And then the most intensive is finding nests and then following them every couple days. And so that, we're not proposing to do that unless we happen to see a nest on the site, but we are looking to do more 3-hour mist netting banding. Let's see what's next. We can go past this. It's just about the point, and this is an empty slide by mistake. So the mist netting, the way the mist netting works is it's 3 hours of a fixed effort, putting out nets that are almost invisible to the birds. And we go out and we will, like a purse seine net, we're a human purse seine, it will have a line of people that will walk through the marsh and flush the birds out of the grasses and hopefully into the net where they sort of hang like they're in a little hammock, and we can remove them, take some measurements, put that band like a bracelet on them, and release them unharmed. We've been doing this in Accabonac Harbor, in the Merrill Lake Sanctuary and Kaplan Meadows for a number of years now. So this is our proposal. Because we have seen birds up near Girard Drive in that section of marsh that's owned by the town of East Hampton, we would like permission to net and measure and band and release birds there. You can go to the next slide. This is where sort of we've been looking for birds. So far, the most abundant birds have been at Merrill Lake and the Kaplan Meadows Sanctuary, but that is also admittedly where we've been spending our time. So it would be great to know, get an estimate of how many birds are up at the East Hampton owned marshes in the north and whether they're actively and successfully breeding there. Next slide. I don't know if on your PDF, can you try to click on that link? It's a 5-minute video put together by the Kovetch Lab at UNH. Maybe if you want to watch a 5-minute video, you can see it here. This shows the process of mist netting, where these nets are bigger than we would use. We would use only a 6-panel net. And this video, I think, describes also taking blood samples, but we're not doing that here. If you click on the square on the bottom right, would that make the
Full screen, yeah.
Where the movie's playing.
In the,
Yep,
There you go. Click that. Yeah. And it's there is a narrator talking, but I can just talk you through this. So the team here is setting up poles because the marsh peat is so squishy. We had bamboo poles out this morning that we were able to push into the marsh and spread these almost invisible nets out. You can see them as they move, as they're moving them there. And it should get to them flushing birds out of the marsh grasses and into the net. Maybe, I think this is sort of this video and then just a question slide is what I had left, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have either about these birds or the process of mist netting that we're proposing to do on the East Hampton town property. And any questions that I can't answer about the birds, I'm happy to go to my partners who know more about their biology than I do and get answers back for you. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doctor. So Anne-Marie, if we could just take this down, I suggest anybody, it's on our town website under town board materials. If you want to see more of this video, please, you can click on a link that will be there. And Anne-Marie, can you get us back up?
Gotcha.
Okay.
My last slide was
we
a
we
picture
have-
of a hatchling from Kaplan Meadows from 2 years ago. So we had featured hatchlings both from the Merrill Lake Sanctuary and Kaplan Meadows.
Thank you so much. And I'm just going to shift and
course,
start with
absolutely.
Ian as
Yep.
he's the liaison to Springs.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Brian. This is a very interesting project to me, and I appreciate this information. And Brian and Morgan from Natural Resources, I know participated in the workshop a little while back, and were kind enough to sort of fill me in and go over this, and I learned a lot. I often visit the Merrill Lake Sanctuary just because it's a beautiful place, and I obviously drive by and walk by salt marshes on Girard Drive and Nat Peak, and I've always appreciated it for their natural beauty. But I'm embarrassed to say that I learned a lot from you, Brian, about the agricultural history there, as well as mosquito ditches. I didn't know, all of that. I knew that they were important natural habitat and natural resources, but I didn't quite understand the extent of it. And to hear you compare it to rainforests and, other places with biodiversity, I just didn't realize that there was so much there. I'm excited. I see some birder friends of mine in the audience, by the way, too. So I know the salt marsh sparrow is an exciting species. What excites me most about this project, though, is I think it's something that through study, we can really achieve, through small changes, achieve real impact. I understand there's very small embankments or gradients that affect the hydrology and the water flow, which not only will restore the habitat and, provide and the natural resources, but also, as you mentioned, help with mosquito problems, which is something we all face. Nobody likes to see spraying, but nobody likes to have mosquitoes. And so through sort of smart, intelligent changes that I think will be affordable and achievable, we might be able to make a real difference. So I'm fully behind this project and want to support it however I can. And just thank you for coming to give this presentation today.
Thank you.
Tom?
Yeah, Dr. Mayor, thank you. It was an excellent presentation. I enjoyed it, and I'll echo Ian's sentiments there that, the agricultural history here is fascinating. That wetlands and marshes aren't better understood publicly, globally, as a key indicator of our environmental health, and the importance of biodiversity is something that I think we're going to have to continue to educate people on, because they are critical. I'm totally supportive of your additional location suggestion for Gerard Drive. I think that would be an excellent location. My only ask would be, is there any way to get Napeague Meadows in there as well? To me, Napeague Harbor is an area I would like more focus on generally, and the Midlands there. I don't know if they are existing sparrow habitats. I would assume so, but to include those in the study, I think would be beneficial as well. But just overall, I'm very glad that you're pursuing this. I think it's an excellent course.
Thank you so much. And Napeague Meadows is a state-owned property.
Right.
They have given us a permit starting last year, the year before, and we've caught lots of sparrows there. And the end of the summer last year, catching juveniles there. So it is like Accabonac Harbor, successfully breeding sparrows, and like Accabonac Harbor has some of these old manipulations that, with some light tweaking, we could sort of improve the habitat even further. And so I'm glad that you mentioned your interest in Napeague too,
Yep.
because it is also one of the priority sites.
Great.
And that's one of the most beautiful places in the town. I love to
I
drive
agree.
down that road. And I don't want to, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding was also that sites were selected that were readily achievable. So on a scale to sort of prove a concept, and I think the Gerard Drive area, you have a plan in place that you think can work, and a proof of concept that will hopefully be expanded, I think, to all salt marshes in the area if we get permission from property owners.
My only other question for you is, aside from the habitat degradation and loss, what are the other threats that are impacting sparrow life cycles?
So there was a study a number of years ago looking at their mercury bird in the salt marsh sparrows, and this was another group where the Nature Conservancy sampled birds at Merrill Lake and other marshes across Long Island, from the East End in Quogue at the Pine Neck Sanctuary and Hempstead marshes, looking at where they were picking up mercury. And so, like, the saying Mad Hatter disease, if their mercury burden is enough, then their brains are impacted, so they're not making smart decisions. And they need to make smart decisions so they can figure out where to nest for the greatest chance of success. So that is one sort of potential threat to them, but really the threat to them is nest flooding. Their chicks, their eggs are getting flooded up and over the cups of their nests because the marsh isn't keeping up with sea level rise. And so it's really the biggest threat to them, even though they have, so sometimes mercury burdens, their biggest threat is threat from nest failure. And so the solution for that is making sure that our marshes, the plants in our marshes, are growing really well, so they can put out lots of roots and rhizomes below ground and trap sediments and keep up with sea level rise. And if our marshes are healthy, the birds will be successful because we'll still have that high marsh habitat that they need for their narrow nesting window. And that serves us all in terms of attenuating wave energy, cycling nutrients, filtering water. So it's really that marsh health and flooding frequency are their biggest threats.
Have you ever looked at the location of 66 Wainscott Main Street? The CPF property was just acquired. There's a significant marshland there. Any thoughts?
I'm not sure where. Can you define?
In Wainscott on Main Street, 66 Main.
That's pretty much fresh water.
Okay.
Yeah, I
No
don't know that
brackish.
address.
There's not salt marsh there.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, salt marsh sparrows really, they're
Just
so
salt, okay.
specialized.
Their name.
They live their entire lives there.
Thank you.
So there's no other predators to the sparrow?
So one of the reasons they build their nests in these really what would seem inhabitable places is that they are avoiding predators. And I have never found a salt marsh sparrow nest that's in use because they hide them so incredibly well. These are tiny little birds, and they require the old thatch or the grasses from last year that are still dry and in the marsh, and they weave them together and they make a little tiny nest cup that they suspend in the marsh grasses, so it's just off the surface of the marsh platform. And then if there's extra tall grasses around, they will weave them like a hood over the top of their tiny little nest. And so it prevents, and because they're all the way out in the marsh, they do not like to nest under trees, or generally not even under tall ivy or groundsel bushes, because they don't want predators to be able to see them. So their adaptations are to prevent them from being prey to predators.
So a couple of questions, if you don't mind. So the Susan McGraw-Keeber is probably the individual you've also worked with a lot with the town trustees. We have a town trustee here also. I think there's also some trustee land in that peak. You can probably contact them. As far as the creek, in the Bonnet Creek is what a lot of us call it in Springs, very familiar with that in the corduroy path that you're discussing. So you're asking for just access to the town properties for some of this tagging. And is eventually, are you going to be looking at trying to remove some of the vector control ditches? What's the next step from this?
The next step is removing some of those excessive, what you think of as mosquito ditches that were probably, even before they were mosquito ditches, they were agricultural ditches. And we've got plans in the works that our contractor is supposed to be putting together as a permitting package to put in front of you. And I'm happy to come back and talk about some of the techniques that we would use. So in terms of removing some of the vector control or mosquito ditches, we use a technique that we call ditch remediation. And it's basically healing the peat from the bottom up by mowing and raking some of the grasses at the end of the growing season and blowing them down into the ditch to form sort of a fabric or a network, and then holding those there with twine and stakes. And then as the tide comes in and goes out, that network of grasses from last year are trapping sediments and helping those ditches repair themselves from the bottom up by regrowing peat, marsh soils from the bottom up. And that will not only improve the aesthetics of the marsh because you won't have all of those linear mosquito ditches out there, but it forces the tide through just the identified main channels. And by forcing all of the energy of the tide through fewer channels and fewer channels and dendritic pathways, it keeps the sediments suspended sediments in suspension in the water as the tide comes in, and helps deposit those sediments on the surface of the marsh so that the marsh platform can keep up. And that's sort of one of the light touch approaches that we are proposing for restoring the health of the marsh at Acquabonic Harbor.
It's probably the best I've ever heard it explained. To be honest, it's one of the best I've ever heard it explained how to actually get rid of the vector control ditches. In the past, they put sandbags in there and they just try to stop it. But by trying to desettle the very fine sediments that will come in with the tides and try to build it up naturally on there then too, that's probably the best I've heard it explained to me in 25 years.
Oh, thank you.
there.
Well, I'm happy to come back with pictures to show you how it's worked in other places as well. But that's the idea.
Yeah. So Acquabonic Protection Committee, Glenn Vincent and them, you've probably been in contact with also down there also. They do a great job there. I know the town has been, being able to purchase other properties, working with Marianne and others in the locations of the Maloney property down by the Nancy Kelly Preserve.
Right.
Also there then too. So overall, I agree with Ian and everyone else that they're saying about using town property for this, because again, it allows you to have more justification for the next steps for the health of that harbor. You could see how the channel was changed. back in 38, nearly 100 years ago, and how, they had to dredge those locations. And sometimes, on the sand spits out there in the mud flats, they'll grow, but they'll ebb and go with different tidal flushes. But what you'll see deep in there right now is there's a lot of standing water. And I think one of the benefits of this, if you get rid of that standing water back in the tidal marshes, you'll get rid of that mosquito larvae. And some of the scariest things you see down there is if you're with your kids is when the helicopter comes over top to spray.
It's loud, it's close,
It's frightening. So if there's one of those, and I understand what they're doing and they alert you, but if this is a step that you can get to decreasing that or removing that from what we're used to, I'm completely supportive of that.
That's very much what we're hoping, that and certainly having that real-time data decrease the frequency of that helicopter coming and spraying and disturbing. And it's been able to do that without any increase in public health threats. So that's been wonderful. And then if we can restore the hydrology and the water movement to get rid of these last remaining persistent hotspots, the upper reaches of the marsh, that would be fantastic.
Thank you for your presentation.
So I'm just going to agree with my colleagues and just let folks know there is I had a draft resolution on for an agreement to allow this project to happen. That'll be on for today. But I also, one of the first groups I joined 20 years ago was Acabonic Protection Committee, and at that time the founder was Seal Downs, who was a wealth of information on all things Acabonic. And it's my understanding that besides the agricultural uses that those ditches were for, it was a WPA project, simply to give folks work back in Roosevelt times. And so these ditches kind of were to put people to work rather than based on some kind of science that and of course they're doing more harm than good. We know that now. So any efforts to remediate that, the quest to do that has been going on for at least 20 years that I know of. So this is a wonderful to see this moving forward. And I did have the same question as Tom regarding the decline along the East Coast. And so what I understand and what I was looking for is it seems like sea level rise is playing a significant role here. And this is why it's important to have these studies, not just for the specific species, but it's through these studies that don't have the topic sea level rise in it. Just like how we learned about the climate crisis globally, when you have these independent studies going on that are showing impacts to species, that the question of sea level rise wasn't in it to begin with, or looking for it is how we came to these conclusions about these impacts. So it's important on so many levels, and I really thank you and your team and for your wonderful presentation today and for educating us.
Thank you. Well, we're all still learning. And so when I put out my monitoring stations to monitor how Acabonic Harbor was keeping pace with sea level rise or not back in 2008, I didn't have an appreciation of the farming history out here. And so all of our marsh migration models, many of you may have heard of SLAM models before, all of those models are based on data from stations like mine that are monitoring how the marsh is growing, but it's growing under these modified conditions. And so I am optimistic that if we can fix the growing conditions in these areas that, of our marshes, that we will be able to do better keeping up with sea level rise, because we were monitoring marshes under sort of hampered conditions, not appreciating these historical manipulations that are impacting the growing conditions of the vegetation on those plots. So I'm optimistic that with these light touches, we'll be able to help the marshes keep up with sea level rise, support the birds, and do everything else we want them to do for us.
Thank you so much for the optimism. There's nothing better than that.
If you don't mind, Deputy Supervisor, so just like the Montauk Library is a wealth of historical knowledge to all things Montauk, the East Hampton Historical Society does a winter lecture series, and about 15 years ago, Bob Hefner gave a lecture on the original 13 families of East Hampton and how the families were divided onto Main Street, from the Gardners to the Buell, Samuel Buell, and then they got properties that are beyond the Eastern Plains, the Western Plains, and Acabonic Creek on there for the original Bonikers that are up there, because salt hay is a commodity back in the day, and that's why you had corduroy paths there. So you can get them on LTV and such. It's just a great history how East Hampton was formed in the colonial days and how it was split off for each other's benefits then too. And that's why there was the Talmadge Farm Lane There's a farm, dairy farm in all those areas. There's a lot of history to Accabonac. And it's nice to try to bring that back in through discussions like this too.
I would love to learn more about that. Deanna Tinkinen sent me some resources from the Springs Historical
Yeah.
Society or library, but I know that there's a treasure trove more out there. So I'd love to learn more.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, next.
Nicole, you had mentioned that.
Jim, if you want to speak, why don't you come up to the podium? This way folks at home can hear you as well. Kind of, it's like a ghost. Well, we want folks at home to hear you, Jim.
Nicole, thank you. And I don't know whether you're aware.
So Jim, could you just tell everybody who you are? I know everyone here knows who
Jim
you are.
Grimes.
Jim, you're being facetious. Jim is a town trustee, and I just want to make sure everybody here and at home knows.
Are
that.
you
Thanks, Jim.
familiar with the work that DU's involved in up in Maine, elevating the salt marshes up there, specifically targeting providing better habitat for the salt marsh sparrow?
There are definitely projects happening in Maine and Massachusetts where they're building sort of elevated habitat islands. So if digging a drainage channel like a runnel, putting that material onto the salt marsh to create a local high area. And the willets have already found them, and the willets are building their nests there. We haven't had any salt marsh sparrows build on those microtopography sort of habitat
All right,
islands
so
yet.
you're familiar.
We need to figure out what's the optimum size, and so there are smart people studying that to try to figure out to optimimise the height and dimensions of those microtopography habitat islands. The floating islands don't work, but the tidal,
No, they're doing it. They're
right
doing
on
it.
the marsh
They're
surface, they
doing it as part of a restoration
Yeah.
project, specifically targeting, as the name implies, ducks. But the collateral benefits that they're hoping for is the salt marsh sparrow. You know, DU's one of those organizations that it's a bunch of hunters, but they do more for wetland restoration and conservation than a whole lot of organizations do combined. You know, up in New Brunswick, my family was very involved in agricultural work in marshes going back to the 1600s as to rebuilding or reestablishing these marshes that were impoundments at one point, because what they did is we didn't have them here, the little abatos, the one-way valves that drained the marsh and allowed the fresh water to go out and blocked the salt water to come in. I don't think they did that here, but that was a long history up in New Brunswick, and they're basically fixing what was done. They're rebuilding fish ladders that no longer function properly, things like that. So anyway.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Jim. There's a lot of history out here, verbal histories that make it even more exciting to talk to people like Jim just gave us. So thank you so much. I appreciate your presentation. Next up, we have CCOM Save Montauk's Water campaign with Kay Tyler and Rebecca Holloway. Welcome, ladies.
Hi, guys.
And would you just, I know everyone in the room knows you, but just introduce yourselves for folks watching.
Thanks.
And there are a lot of folks watching. People will be surprised.
Good afternoon, town board members. I'm Kay Tyler, Executive Director of Concerned Citizens of Montauk. I'm here with Rebecca Holloway, who is our advocacy manager and scientist on staff. We're here to present the Save Montauk's Water campaign. Thank you to our community for your show of support here today. Also, thank you to CCOM board members who are here as well in the audience, and to the town board for the opportunity to present this to everyone here. This is not a new effort, but a necessary one. We'll go through the following topics. Goals of Save Montauk's Waters campaign, the need for this, what our outreach to the community looks like, what the Fort Pond study will look like and accomplish, who are our partners, what grant funding is available to our community, summary and outcome of our campaign.
Great.
All right, thank you, Kay. And again, thank you, Deputy Supervisor Rogers and council members for having us today and the opportunity to present. And I'm Rebecca Holloway. Thanks for the introduction. So this slide here, jumping in, is pretty full, but it is a breakdown of the nitty-gritty of our campaign and its core goals. And I will go through the necessary overview now. So the Save Montauk's Waters campaign is a targeted water quality initiative. It's rooted in site-specific outreach, engagement, and science. The campaign is twofold. That's the two columns. So the first in the left column there, CCOM will provide educational programming to the community. First, CCOM will assist in amplifying existing town outreach related to Town of East Hampton's Septic Incentive Program, SIP, as well as available town water quality improvement project funds available under Chapter 112 of East Hampton Town Code, Section 4-6. I am a voting member of the Town Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee, giving me some background as well as colleagues and contacts to speak to these programs. We will also hold 4 educational events, ranging from an in-person seminar event, similar in nature to last year's Coastal Resilience event that was held here in Montauk Library, to in-person workshops at the CCOM office here in Montauk, as well as webinars. Next, we will promote community awareness and participation through a pledge program that we are calling Clean Water Stewards. The definition of stewards in our campaign are homeowners and business owners as well who pledge to take 1 or more of 10 pollutant reducing steps and advocate for clean water in East Hampton. And the last proposed item listed in the left column there is that we would like to lead educational signage adjacent to Fort Pond. The contents are yet to be designed, but can include information focused on what you can do to protect the pond and reduce contaminants going in, as well as some interpretive educational components. This is all pending town approval, and Natural Resources is listed on the slide, but we will have all relevant departments and officials take part as needed in that process. The second half of Save Montauk's Waters is site-specific efforts on problem areas and water bodies identified through over 10 years, dating back to 2013, of CCOM monitoring in partnership with Surfrider Foundation Eastern Long Island chapter, and now Peconic Baykeeper as well. And these 3 nonprofit organizations on the East End form the Eastern Long Island Blue Water Task Force, BWTF. And in this side of the initiative, CCOM has contracted Dr. Chris Gobler of Stony Brook School of Marine and Atmospheric Science to take a comprehensive look, never before conducted to this scope, as well as an updated study to assess Fort Pond. The study has 6 main objectives, which are outlined here, and I'll speak to these more in later slides. But to start, we emphasize that the ultimate goal of this study is solid evidence-backed recommendations for remediation of toxic blue-green algae and pathogenic bacteria in the pond. That will be cost-effective and long-lasting. These approaches will be achieved through a robust understanding of the pond system itself. And for reporting out results, that last bullet there, an interim oral report will be delivered by Dr. Gobler prior to a final report. And the report will provide insight with regard to the most efficient and cost-effective approaches for improving conditions. The study will also engage the Center for Clean Water Technology to produce approved approaches based on the best available recent data collected.
So the ask is, the town is no stranger to Save Montauk's Water campaign, as CCOM partnered with Natural Resources a few years ago with Save the Lake, Save the Pond campaign. It was to accomplish very similar goals. We asked the town again to partner with CCOM on this effort by contributing up to 9 hours of natural resource staff time. We also asked the board for permission to conduct a CCOM commissioned 12 months long study in Fort Pond by Dr. Gobler at Stony Brook University. We'll go through these in detail in some of the later slides.
Okay, great. A little background now on Fort Pond. So this is an approximately 100-acre water body in the town of Montauk, in Montauk and the town of East Hampton. And it is also, for those who didn't know, it's the second largest freshwater body on Long Island. So as I'm sure you know, and for some remember firsthand, this pond was historically a very healthy place. It was full of life. It was actually named a significant coastal fish and wildlife habitat, meaning it was specifically designated by the Department of State upon recommendation from the DEC as a habitat recognized for its special characteristics, including being home to a list of rare species, as well as being incredibly biodiverse. So Fort Pond was, for those reasons, a destination fishing and recreation hub. Many residents have expressed to us in their own words what the pond used to be. And we know that it was also an important waterfowl wintering area in the 70s and 80s as well. And for the past decade, however, we've had a very different story in the pond. It's now classified as a Section 303D impaired water body by the state, and this status remains to this day. So Fort Pond, of course, is central to Montauk, and we here have a shared vision in this room to help remediate this important water body to the unique and valuable resource for people and wildlife alike that it once was. Next slide, please. So here we highlight why this project is urgently needed. First, to protect public safety and ecosystem health. Fort Pond's water quality has deteriorated sharply in the last 2 decades. And what was once a thriving ecosystem now poses risks not only to aquatic life, but to our year-round residents and also tens of thousands of visitors who can use it for recreation, potentially. And harmful algal blooms and toxic algal blooms have created unsafe conditions for swimming and other activities in the pond. Montauk's environment is Montauk's main attraction. This is a quote from the Montauk Chamber of Commerce. And as we all know, tourism, recreation, and the overall economy depend on clean water. It matters to our community that the swimming portion of the mighty Montauk Triathlon had to be canceled or relocated 3 times in just 5 years because of water quality concerns in the pond. And lastly, we need to understand the threats truly to their full extent, and as well as apply best solutions. So the thing to emphasize here is that we already have the tools to fix this problem. And the proven technology and engineered solutions exist now. But we do need site-specific data to guide implementation. Similar to our last presentation, we cannot, even on the East Coast in that instance, apply a one-size-fits-all solution to all of our water bodies. And that's why this work is important. So it means identifying the extent and variation of the contaminant sources in the pond, which may very well significantly differ across the pond's watershed, and we need to determine which interventions are most appropriate for each individual area. So again, a blanket one-size-fits-all approach for remediation is not likely to be effective, and that's what this study is about, laying the groundwork for a smart, targeted, cost-effective, and long-term remediation strategy. So as a quick recap of the goals I reviewed at the start, this project combines site-specific science with direct community support, and in the meanwhile supports implementation of currently known and recommended to date solutions. So over the next year, CCOM is collaborating in data collection and project design with the Gobler Lab at Stony Brook to conduct a comprehensive study of Fort Pond's water quality, while at the same time, we will continue our outreach and education campaign, raising awareness and helping residents access existing funding and resources towards the goal of strong community buy-in for septic upgrades. Next slide. So here is again the description of the outreach side of our campaign, which is focused on helping the community take action now. The first here is that we'll offer one-on-one support to help residents apply for CPF and SIP grants to upgrade their septic systems to systems that actually treat waste. And the second here is we'll present 4 public events that will cover topics like IA systems, landscaping for clean water, and what's next for Fort Pond. And the last point here is that we're doing targeted outreach in the Watershed Protection District in Fort Pond and in the wider community as well. We're recruiting 150 clean water stewards and supporting 50 wastewater system upgrade projects. Okay, for the overview.
So here's what CCOM's outreach plan looks like. It's really small on the screen, but I can walk through it sort of row by row really quickly. We intend to have a series of 3 webinars. The first one, we would love the town's help on presenting with Sam Schur, presenting a septic application walkthrough. So it's sort of a step-by-step thing for everybody. The second one in August will be presented by Dr. Gobler. Well, he will go in depth into what he's doing with his study, with the 12-month study of Fort Pond. The third webinar will be sometime in late fall on sustainable land practices, so everyone's a little more educated on what we all can do in our own backyards, in our own home, in our own everyday lives. We also plan to have a few in-person touch points with the community. So in August, we will designate an open house Thursdays for community members to come in as CCOM staff personally assist them with their applications. So you're not on your own anymore. We're helping everyone get through this process and even help shepherding it through the town, the county, and also the state. In September or October, the town and other experts will be invited to be a speaker on our panel at the Montauk Library, filmed by LTV, just like our 2024 Coastal Resiliency and Speaker event that we thought was very successful for our community. And then our focus on signing up clean water stewards will start in the fall to sign up total of 150 stewards. If you want to sign up today, you can. You don't have to wait for the fall. But Rebecca will walk you through what it means to be a steward on the next slide. The campaign will be included in all of our direct mail letters and social media and on our website, and will be active throughout the year.
Okay. And next slide. We'll go over our Clean Water Steward Pledge. So this is the pledge, which was adapted from LINAP, which is the DEC's Long Island Nitrogen Action Plan. And it was also run through draft consultation with our partner Change Hampton as well. Various other important organizations or well-known organizations as well have used similar adapted plans from that Nitrogen Action Plan as to this one, such as Peconic Estuary Partnership. So we've collaborated with them in putting together this list here. So this, in the format in which the pledge will be shared, these bullets become check boxes where homeowners can select one or more actions to pledge their contribution to clean water in East Hampton. And I'll go through the steps of the plan. Apologies, it's 10 points long, but I think it's interesting to, or at least good to know what's on the plan. So for the first action is to use organic fertilizer or none at all. We have plant native trees, flowers, and shrubs, upgrade to an IA septic system, or pump out your existing septic or cesspool. Next is leave grass clippings on the lawn and bag leaves. Always pick up your pet's waste, even in your own yard. Increase permeable ground around your home. set mower height at 3.5 inches or taller, redirect downspouts into garden beds, use a commercial car wash instead of washing at home, and lastly, you could add a rain barrel to your yard or garden. And the bonus is to really increase awareness and spread the word to a neighbor to also become a steward in the town. So in this slide, I'll again highlight a central goal of our contracted study, which is to produce clear science-based recommendations that will help guide an effective solution for Fort Pond. Dr. Gobler, who directs as well the Center for Clean Water Technology, will bring in his expertise and his team at the Research Center to identify the best case remediation approach specific to Fort Pond. And the results will ultimately support long-term lasting water quality improvement in the pond. And I also want to note that CCOM and the community are involved throughout this process of the contracted study. Our team, including local students in our internship program, who are actually in the audience today, shout out, will be assisting the Gobler Lab by collecting data and delivering samples to Southampton. And we'll also host a webinar to keep the community informed upfront and create space for dialogue, and also continue sharing water quality data in our existing monitoring program to support public health and safe decisions in and on the water. Here, I can dive a little bit more into the study and its components. So first off, water quality isn't static. It can change by the hour, and it can be very different even a few meters apart, so both temporally and spatially. Our current monitoring with the Blue Water Task Force gives us valuable snapshots of water quality, but not the full picture. One big example temporally is that if it rains on the days after our weekly Monday morning sampling, bacteria levels can spike in that time, making those weekly results that we reported out less useful at that point for public safety. And this is something we include in our reporting as well. So there are lots more examples for different parameters, water quality parameters that change within a day diurnally, affecting the conditions of the whole system and potentially conditions that would affect negative implications such as these blooms. In one instance is dissolved oxygen. So this study, in contrast, is comprehensive with continuous monitoring provided. So we'll have a buoy that's able to provide live results so that we can provide that same resource, but to a more useful degree. So that's continuous monitoring, field sampling and experiments, and high-res mapping. We plan to finally get a deep understanding of what's happening in Fort Pond. We're testing how nutrients, so nitrogen and phosphorus, and also temperature influence toxic algal blooms and where exactly those sources are. From land sediments on Long Island, it's shown that contamination can actually be from resuspension of sediments in the water body as well. We'll be testing subsurface waters, and then we'll be testing groundwater as well. So what water is beneath the ground feeding into the pond in the complex system. So we're also tackling bacteria. CCOM now records and reports frequent exceedances of state health standards in Fort Pond, but the sources remain largely unknown. And this study will use genomic tools to pinpoint those sources of the bacteria. This is called microbial source tracking. So whether it be human, animal, or something else, so that action can be targeted. One point of emphasis here before going on is it's better not to assume that we know the source of bacterial contamination. So, and at CCOM, we do aim to ensure that all of our actions are evidence-based and science-backed, especially larger projects, because we know this leads to the most successful solutions.
So Montauk is fortunate to have so many people and groups passionate about saving our environment. Pictured here are two of our dedicated past and present interns, Camille, who's actually here in person today, and Parker, who we also all consider as partners. Here are our other indispensable partners. Excuse me. In government, from a government perspective, we're joined by the HIP with the town, Suffolk County, and New York State DEC. We're dedicated to helping where we can and keeping everyone informed. Our science partners are Dr. Gobler at Stony Brook and Peconic Estuary Partnership. We regularly work with Blue Water Task Force as well. From a community perspective, our clean water stewards are committed and help us spread the word, along with Montauk Historical Society, Mia's here, who understand that we must work together to preserve all aspects of Montauk. We'd also like to include Third House Nature Center and Change Hampton, whom we consult regularly. We ask that the town's natural resource team help assist the campaign in the following areas: meetings, collaboration, and training. Also, updating the Water Protection District data sheet, which Melissa already started to help us in February this year with some preliminary data. Approximately 31 properties out of 343 have upgraded their septic or are in the process of doing so.
And that's in the watershed,
Yes.
not just directly fronting the pond.
Correct. Yeah. We would like the town to help us open our first webinar with Sam Scher presenting a septic application walkthrough. And in September, October, the town and other experts will be invited to be a speaker on our panel here at the Library Filmed by LTV. Next slide, please. I'd like to refresh everyone's memory on how valuable the funding is for septic reimbursement from the town, county, and state. They're very substantial. For each septic upgrade, the town typically gives $15,000 and in some cases $20,000. Suffolk County gives $15,000 and New York State up to $10,000.
I think there's a bill on the floor to increase the state level as well at this point.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, guys. Update your septics now. This is the time to do it. We'd like to also take a second to clarify how CCOM is funding this campaign. We were awarded $30,000 from New York Community Trust, formerly known as LICF, to fund the outreach and education portion of the campaign. The Fort Pond study is funded by CCOM donors. No additional funding will be needed.
Great, thanks, Kay. So we're getting to the close of our presentation where we'll recap the anticipated outcomes and our goals for the outcomes. Next slide. Again, this is a one-year initiative specific to Fort Pond as well, but the larger East Hampton community will benefit as well with our outreach. All right, so in summary, the goals of this campaign are both science-driven and community-focused. So Dr. Gobler will deliver clear evidence-based recommendations for the most effective ways to reduce harmful algal blooms, bacteria, and nutrient pollution, tailored specifically to Fort Pond. And these will guide a long-term durable remediation plan and inform those potential plans for the future. He will also deliver an interim report before the final report midway through this study period. On the community side, we're aiming to engage 150 clean water stewards. This metric was derived from our previous work with Save the Lake, Save the Pond, and the potential similar numbers to those that we have engaged in the past. And we'll also support 50 wastewater treatment upgrades and ultimately see a decrease in Enterococcus levels over time. So we're planning as well bilingual signage at Fort Pond pending town approval, and this will likely take place in the latter end of our year-long grant from the trust to keep residents and visitors informed and safe around the pond. And the next steps, Kay will.
I also want to acknowledge that there's a lot of people in this room. Laura, you're one of them. Luke Cortese, you too, and also our town people, also natural resources, done so much work on Fort Pond already. So many observations, so much knowledge around it. we just want to get this all together and solve this problem. That's what we really need to do, and we can do it. We just need to get together and just share our knowledge, and just share, and bond together. So just circling back to the original ask here, to get this going, the town's natural resources partnered with us a few years ago to accomplish very similar goals. We asked the town again to partner with CCOM on this effort by contributing up to 9 hours of natural resource staff time to the campaign. It includes collaboration and training, updating the Fort Pond Water Protection District data sheet, and participating in 1 webinar and 1 in-person speaker event. We also asked the town permission to conduct a CCOM commissioned 12-month-long study in Fort Pond by Dr. Gobler at Stony Brook University. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present here.
Thank you, ladies. And just before you step away, I just want to introduce Kim Shaw, our Director of Environmental Protection. That's the Natural Resources Department, and that the ask is for 9 hours of staff time from June to October 2025. Kim, do you want to come up and say anything?
Thanks, guys. Hi, Kim Shaw. Yeah, no, we're definitely supportive of this. We worked with CCOM several years ago. We kicked it off. We had like coffee and donuts and invited people into the office in downtown Montauk. Was really successful, and we're prepared to do it again. We've been reaching out to different homeowners associations, environmental groups, and these guys were the first one to step up and say, yeah, let's do it again. So we're there for them.
Can we do the coffee and donuts again?
I was going to say that. It's always good to start with coffee and donuts. Thank you, Kim.
Sure.
Thanks. So Jim, can we just go around here?
When you can open it up.
Well, usually we don't, but I'll make an exception for you as a town trustee. Hold on. So Tom.
So yeah, look, I mean, firstly, CCOM, thank you. It's an incredible organization. I think it's been at the forefront of protecting Montauk's environment over the last few decades, often leading the way where others have failed. I also want to welcome, there's a new president of the organization, Jesse James, who I've had the fortune of knowing for many years. Jesse, welcome. I'm certain under your stewardship that it's going to continue its excellent work. Look, Fort Pond is something those of us who live in Montauk, we drive past, we see it every day. And when you see those images of green water in there, it's devastating. It tells you straight off the bat that we have a problem. We've looked at many solutions over the years. Septic IA upgrades are critical. One thing I've been able to do is kind of just looking at GIS mapping and see how many of the properties around the pond actually have IA upgrades. It's not a lot, guys. There's a few in the watershed, but even you heard from the statistics here in the watershed, it's still only about 10% of properties in that watershed have made that change. There is funding there to do it. I actively encourage you to do this. This site is, it's environmental. It's also recreational. We talked about the freshwater fishing there. One thing that has been on my bugbear, and I really would like to work with my colleagues to get moving, is restoration of the fishing pier out on Fort Pond. It's fenced off at the moment. Its condition is unacceptable. It's a way for us to encourage future generations to start caring about this water body. It's something we need to do, and Kirk Park as a whole too. I think there's so much work we can do as a town, as a community, to emphasize the importance of the environmental health of this water body. It's something I'd like to do. I think you also call out that this is partnership. It's public, it's private, and it's different government entities. I know there was a lot of concern in the winter period when the state did a project to put stormwater directly into the water body itself, and what impact that might potentially have. It is still of concern. It's something that we need to do better with, but there are challenges. And any kind of understanding of this geographical area will kind of lead you to realize that it's a low point. Water has to flow here. So, stormwater will invariably end up in there, but the more we can do to protect and understand what those impacts are is critical. There's some pieces that are historical design that will be a continued challenge to do. I mean, in some areas, you know, I'm quite convinced that septic systems are probably in the water body itself, just due to the nature of the historical design, and, you know, perhaps prioritization and increased incentivization of those areas where we find potentially higher pollutant concentrations is something I'd like to kind of see. In terms of your asks, I'm entirely supportive of the natural resources time and for the Dr. Gobler study. I think, as we said with the plover information, we've said with the sparrow information, look, the more data we have to make these decisions, the better decisions we make are going to be. So with that, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Tom.
So for myself, the only couple of questions I have, would it be for the site locations for any signage? I know we partnered with the floating wetlands on Industrial Road. We have a campaign with the Highway Department to reclaim our right-of-ways, so just we'll coordinate with that locations if it's in one of the parks or any other locations then too. As far as the buoy monitoring that we've done in the past then too, as Tom said, I think we should do that in more of our waterways. And I know the funding is not necessarily there within the CPF law to do so, but there's other opportunities to collaborate with NGOs to do so then too. And I know Rebecca sits with the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee that I liaison also on that too. I know that, I believe, Kay, you're coming to the Montauk CAC in August then too. So it's another layer of the outreach to community members that might not be in this room, but to the next room. And how do you connect to the next room and collaborate together? Tom is correct. 31 individuals or properties or business owners that have upgraded their septic system in a watershed of nearly 300. That's not enough.
That's not enough.
No.
Right.
And when there's funding out there, and knowing that the town is actually one of those individuals, and too, but we are actively moving forward on upgrading septic systems at at Comfort Stations, Alliance Field. We're also we're prepared with engineering at the Montauk substation in Kirk Park. There's options that been making sure that we're walking the walk now too, as far as the town, and options there too. So please reach out. And I think that's one of the things to educate people that it is a process, but as far as the information that is out there and how to go through the paperwork, there are many individuals, including CCOM in the town, they're willing to help you. Do that too, because there is a lot of money out there. So I'm fully supportive, and I thank you for the collaboration in the past and in the future.
Ian.
Yeah, I'm supportive as well. Obviously, a cleaner pond is good for all of us, and we all want that. You know, Dave and Tom and Kate, through our liaison to natural resources, know more about this, the details, than I do. But I think collaboration is key. I thank Kim Shaw for her willingness to work and support you, and I'm fully supportive of that, for her to represent the town. So it's an exciting project. You know, there's a lot more of this that can happen, but I think it's a really good place to start, and obviously a need. One other thought about the septic. It's great that there's funds available, but what I think people should realize is those funds might not always be available. And so there's an opportunity to do it, you know, for the environment and for the betterment of all, but also financially. There's just no guarantee that those funds will always be available. So I encourage people, and the quicker we act, the quicker things get cleaned up. And so just want to put my plug in for that as well. And thank you very much. I would love to see where this goes and support it all.
Thanks, Ian, and everyone. I'll just say I'm fully supportive of this study. I think it's important to have the data and the numbers and to look for what solutions will work based on those. So the scientific process is certainly commendable. I agree with Ian, and I just want to shout out for the town's septic grant program in conjunction with the county and the state. There's, as you saw on the slide presented, there's plenty of funding right now available. You don't have to be in the watershed. You can apply through wherever you live to this program while it exists. And Ian's right. As my father used to say, strike while the iron is hot, and don't delay on this, because it not only helps our environment, but it gives you a brand new septic system. So it's a win-win across the board. I want to thank CCOM, Kay, and Rebecca for their work on this and their continuing efforts to help us have clean water and a clean environment. I think all of the presentations today showed the importance of protecting our natural resources in every way that we can and not losing them, because it's almost impossible to get them back. So I just want to thank you again for your time, and I look forward to learning more as the liaison to natural resources poke my head in. So thank you very much.
Hey, if you don't mind, while you have the viewing public, you have some upcoming events. Do you want to present those, or let's let the public on TV know?
You're so good. Thank you, David. We have our summer soiree coming up. It is our fundraiser, our annual one for the year at Gurney's Montauk on July 17th. And, we have our tickets online. They're $150 in advance, $175 at the door. It's still the best deal in town because you get to, for 2 hours, dine on seafood. And if seafood's not your thing, we can get something else for you. And cocktails for the full 2 hours. And the best part of it is that you meet like-minded folks who are really enthusiastic about protecting our environment. And that really is the common thread. And it's a real rah-rah night. It sounds corny, but it really isn't, because we all are neighbors to each other. And you get to actually meet them in this one night. So please come Thursday, 7/17. I know that there's a board meeting then, and I apologize, but
We'll be there in spirit, though.
if there's any way you can move it or cancel it,
Yeah, I don't think we can do
please,
that.
you guys are all invited. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
A small thing there too, as a reminder, because we get a little confusion about this, but we're an NGO, non-governmental. We're also a nonprofit. So this event really is our biggest event of the year, and able to support CCOM and also enjoy in other members of the community. So thanks.
Thanks so much.
And keep updated on our newsletters for other events.
Thank you.
Folks, we're going to move on to liaison reports. You're invited to stay, but if you'd like to leave, I'll just take a minute.
Oh, Jim, hang on,
Jim.
hold up. We're going to speaker.
Everyone. We have Jim.
Sorry, guys. Anybody wants to leave, go ahead. I don't have anything good to say.
Just let the room quieten down a bit.
Hi, guys. Jim Grimes. I am not here for the East Hampton trustees. I'm here representing the pond, okay? I think the studies that are being proposed, I wholeheartedly, as a member of this community, support. However,
Jim, hold on a second. Folks,
Guys, can we quieten down, please? We have a talker. Thank you.
However, we've been studying this problem going all the way back to Tony Bullock, okay? Tony Bullock's administration, we identified at that time 85% of the pollution into Fort Pond was generated by road runoff. Some years later, we updated that study and identified the facts that our septic systems contributed significantly because they sit in groundwater, specifically the business community in downtown Montauk. This problem needs some study, but what it really needs is action on the part of this board, because you are in a unique situation here in that this is one of the few problems in this town that you are the complete and total owners of most of the ability to solve the problem. Okay, downtown Montauk desperately needs a wastewater treatment facility. It's been talked about ad nauseum. I know you had plans.
so
I
Jim,
know
I'm happy to tell you that we have a grant and a working partnership now with
Wonderful.
Suffolk
Okay.
County for that same issue.
That is one of the significant contributors, but the major contributor still is the road runoff. Tom, you brought up the fact that that pipe was replaced. That's not a new pipe. That pipe going into Fort Pond was replaced this year, as we have other pipes going into Fort Pond. Second House Road has a pipe going into it. You've got the pipe that leads into it from the very northeasterly corner of the pond, which is over the causeway. You have the pipe that cuts across, which I forget whether it's Ogden's or Peters Brook. Okay, all of these pipes are feeding the road runoffs. These spikes in coliform counts, they're not coming from the septic systems. They're coming from the road runoff. So where's our solutions to this? There's a great opportunity here. Tom, you brought up the fishing piers. Look, that friggin' thing has been falling apart since a year after Dave Webb built it, okay? It was ill-conceived. It has no design that even relates to Second House or Montauk. But Kirk Park, it's predominantly invasive non-native plants at this time. It's a great opportunity. Use CPF funds to develop a created wetland okay, to treat that surface water, at which point you could take and pick up that pipe that the state put in this year, run all of that Main Street water down to Second House, create a beautiful wetland, create an elevated, handicapped, accessible walkway through it to a scaled-down fishing pier. I don't like the word pier. It sounds too friggin' big. Call it a dock that you could fish off of, and you could truly have some real impacts on the water quality. Redoing septic systems, although it's a good thing, most of the septic systems in the watershed leading to Fort Pond are elevated. They're in straight sand. Even the worst ones function pretty well. It's that downtown area, which essentially is teabagging into Fort
So
Pond.
I thank you for your comments, Jim, and that's, I think, why it's important to do the study. So we actually have science data to back up anything that we're saying.
Yeah.
I also want to tell you that one of the reasons why it was important to go for the $600,000 grant, which I'll be talking about in my liaison report that is specific for Montauk, is to model all of these issues and to plan for a sustainable future. And as I told you earlier, this is not on specifically East Hampton taxpayers' money to fund these. This is from state money, which you ultimately fund anyway, in my opinion. But this is why these things are so important for us to be able to gather the science data. I don't think there's a reason in heck not to avail of the septic upgrade program, and I don't think there's any way that with a more modern system you can help your environment one way or the other. And I really appreciate your comments, Jim. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but let's not lose traction to
we're
do
gonna-
the right thing.
We never do, Jim. Thank you so much. As you know, we all work together. Okay, we're going to move on to liaison reports. I'll just give everybody a minute to skate out, if you can do so quietly.
It's nice that everybody wants to hear what we have to say.
I go to YouTube all the time. Sit here for the-
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
If everyone
You
would
can
just-
watch it in the tub. I mean,
If we can just be a little quiet when we're leaving, please. We're still in a meeting. If you want to talk, can you do it outside in the hall? Because our liaison reports are riveting.
folks, if we could exit the room quietly,
We got it,
please.
we got
Thank
it,
you.
We got it. Alrighty. Okay, let's move on to liaison reports. Tom?
Okay, I'll start off with the Amagansett Citizens Advisory Committee. Reminder, we are meeting next Monday, July 14th, and Assemblyman Tommy John Schiavone will be there for that meeting. IT, we are continuing to work with OpenGov. Currently, we are looking within the planning department at various software and hardware acquisitions for the 2026 budget to facilitate for board usage of the OpenGov plans, and also internally the possibility of having a screen where life-size plans can actually be reviewed, that we could possibly keep in one of the meeting rooms. It's just something that will.
So would would the board members have to come in to see?
If they wish to view them life-size, I mean, literally a life-size kind of plan, yes, but otherwise, the proposal that's coming from the planning department is the acquisition of iPads and tablets to allow people to do it out in the field, but not on their own devices, which I understand for security issues as well. Human Services, a reminder that today there is a meeting in 1 at 2 p.m. For painting and drawing classes. This will be taught by Teresa Lawlaw, who is one of the members of our East Hampton Arts Council. Wednesday's osteoporosis prevention class is being cancelled. However, we are having at 11 a.m. A functional fitness class with Tracy. It's working on your balance to stop and prevent falls. And lastly, for Human Services, on Friday, July 11th, there is an arts and crafts activity for watercolor painting. Fire marshals. I just want to take the time to thank our fire marshal's office and our chief fire marshal. They had an exceptionally challenging weekend over 4th of July. The discovery of the plover nest was something that they were an active part of, and I was incredibly impressed with the leadership of our chief fire marshal. So I just wanted to take the time to thank him publicly for that. Sanitation, we continue on our budget work for next year. I have received numerous communications. People still have concerns about the conditions of the recycling area, specifically on Springs Fireplace Road. I am going to be working, in the past we explored where there was a possibility of having volunteer groups come in and help facilitate a tidy up of that area. Previously we kind of said that there's challenges to that because there's concerns about liability of people falling. I would like to work with the town attorney's office to see if there's a waiver people could sign to actually get some public members to come in and help tidy that up as possible. I think it could be an interesting thing, and I will be doing that myself. Ideally, we're looking to do it on Wednesdays when the facility will be closed.
We used to do community service.
Right. So I think there's paths to do it, but we have to be creative.
No, the community service, so you got time served type thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, high school students too. Fort Hill Cemetery. We had a meeting yesterday morning to look at our budget for 2025. If you have a chance while you're out here, fellow board members, I do recommend taking a drive up there to have a look at the facility. Number one, it's one of the most beautiful sites in the town. It is in need of some repair. Just a variety of projects have happened up there. Some of the Belgian block needs replacing. These are things we're looking at for 2025's budget investment. Also some tree trimming of the cherry trees up there, just to keep that area as special as it is. East End Fire Commissioners, a reminder, we have a meeting. The next meeting is September 30th. That's at the Bridge Hampton location. Public safety. First of all, I want to take a moment to share all our condolences with people in Texas. What happened down there was incredibly tragic. I have friends whose families were lost there, and it's devastating. On that note, we did actually get a storm notice ourselves in East Hampton town for today. There's expected storms starting from 2 p.m. going till late this evening. Please take the necessary precautions. Again, with all our storms and floods, know your zone. You can go onto the town website and understand if you are at a flood risk and have that plan to get out there as well. I don't know if you're going to do the chief's report on.
I have it.
Okay, so I'm going to leave that to you, but I just want to say thank you to all our first responders this weekend. You did an outstanding job. Arts Council. We had a very successful LTV event a few weeks ago. One of the follow-ups on that is to create a list of, communications list for all artists who want to be advised of any Arts Council events that go on. If anybody wishes to reach out and be on that list, they can reach out to my office, either to myself or to my legislative secretary, Anne-Marie, and provide your email, and we will ensure you're on that list and you get updates for any calendar events that are happening. And that is everything for my liaison report. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sean. Dave?
Over the July 4th weekend, it was a very busy weekend on East Hampton town beaches. Parking was at the capacity and overflowed at locations in both Amagansett and the Montauk district. This is coming from the voice of the Lieutenant Jeff Thompson from the East Hampton town lifeguards. Lifeguards estimated the town have hosted approximately 16,000 patrons on its protected beaches from July 3rd to July 6th. Atlantic Avenue Beach saw the most attendance of the protected beaches so far in July, and just this weekend they are estimated that they saw nearly 5,600 people. They're demonstrating the need for a fourth stand now operating on the weekends, or otherwise known as wing stands. Despite prevailing green flag calm conditions, over the holiday lifeguards recorded 29 rescues and rendered aid to 6 medical emergencies, 5 of which resulted in EMS transport. 8 of these responses were outside of protected areas, hence please swim in the lifeguard areas. Rescue and aid responses also the seasons were many. Lifeguards have recorded 290 interactions with public, informing them of coastal dangers such as rip currents and such. So they're very active on the beaches, just not sitting on the stands. Patrons are also advised to use the town's QR links that are posted at the beach signs, link them to the most up-to-date conditions, including newly developed interactive condition maps, granular to each individual and beach access marker. Compliance with dog ordinances remains one of the greatest areas of difficulty on the beaches, with lifeguards interacting with dog owners at a 4 times the rate that they are advising public of dangerous conditions, hence 1,200 times. Frequent staff are met with obvious false claims that their dog is a service dog, so please listen to the lifeguards. If not, you will be met with a Marine Patrol officer. Currently, there are 143 active lifeguards serving in a variety of capacities at our town beaches, which also include conducting the town's Nipper and junior lifeguard recreation programs 7 days a week. In service training of the beach staff is focused largely on physical condition, PWC, which is personal watercraft protocols, and spinal injury management. I thank Chief John Ryan Jr. and all his staff at all our locations. I look forward to working with him as the season goes on. I want to let everyone know in recreation at the town's town Montauk Playhouse that the town is continuing with a residents-only play through the month of July. We did the pilot program in June. So again, on the weekends and Saturdays, Sundays, it will be for resident-only play. And so far, that has been met with good success. We had a couple of things. Tom was discussing this a little bit last week, and we went to more discussions on enforcement meetings about trying to deal with ride shares and specific drop-off locations. This was discussed a little bit at the Montauk CAC meeting last night, specifically down by the train station, what can be done when large trains are getting off, and how that is actually affecting the flow for safety for either first responders or users of that area. We'll continue that discussion tomorrow in our enforcement meetings. I want to let everyone know that the multi-use field, which is for soccer, football, men's, women's lacrosse, softball, and field hockey at the Honorable Fred Field Memorial recreational facility at Stephen Hans Path is pretty much substantially complete. They were hydro seeding today. I look forward to doing a ribbon cutting there probably in the next coming weeks on there. I'll put that onto your schedules. But we also look forward to all the youth and adults using that field. It's come out quite wonderfully, and I think James Pincott and his staff for overseeing that project. It is a wonderful project adding to the softball and Little League fields are there. Adding on that, tonight, the East Hampton Little League, the U10 boys, under 10 boys, they actually won a game on Sunday. They were down 11-1, and they rallied for a 12-1 victory at East Hampton's at the Stephen Hans Path Fields. They will play in Riverhead tonight at Stotsky Park, probably at 6 p.m. If anyone's up in that area, Costco or such, wants to stop in and cheer on the East Hampton Town Bonnet under 10 baseball team. Good luck today, boys. I want to let everyone know that also the Montauk Playhouse at the Montauk CAC last night, we had a presentation from the new president of the Montauk Playhouse Community Center Foundation, Jennifer Carney Iacono. She showed multiple pictures of how the pool is looking, the Multicultural Center, and they have a ribbon cutting that is scheduled for August 15th of this year. So a lot of good work there. The pool is looking great. Obviously, there's a punch list of stuff to do, but after 20 years and specifically 2 years of construction, we are at the nearly at the end of it also. Two things I want to let everyone know that Legislator Ann Welker, also working with myself and others, and also Legislator Stark from the Suffolk County Legislature, laid on the table last week draft language for the working waterfront definitions. This is very important to the town's fisheries and fisheries of all Suffolk County. There was a meeting on August 5th that individuals can actually call in with their support. I will probably be going to that, so I might have to leave the meeting a little earlier. I believe it's in Hauppauge. I might get lucky in Riverhead. But either way, we'll be in attendance.
12 hours?
Well, yeah, there's a Costco there. We'll be in attendance, and we'll get there shortly then too. So lastly, I want to let everyone know there's an impending amount of construction that's going to be happening down by Lowenstein Pipe, where we're going to re-sleeve the pipe down there. We will find out what the construction timeline and scheduling upcoming and let the general public know, but there will be some disturbance there. We will make sure we'll work within what the public access is. Also, I mentioned this to the Montauk CAC last night, and I know the supervisor is not here, and if she brings it up again, it's great. What dropped in your mailboxes this past week was the town's first ever mailer. It is another way in which the town board, as you can see here, is trying to do outreach to the general residents. We do that either through the town's Instagram or social media pages. If you're on that, I'm not, but it's there. There's also Alert Me Now, which Tom knows very well. You can sign up for our information. We do that through papers. We do that through signs, like our move over signs. But I want to congratulate Madam Supervisor, if you're listening. It was met with a very good response last night at the CAC. A lot of this came from the CAC about individuals saying, I didn't know about this. So Town Board is trying every way possible to get it out there. It mostly goes on this time the QR code about some of the information we have about our summer. And I know the supervisor is trying to modernize the way we constantly get our information out there. But I received it also, and I think she did a very good job. And I know she's heard that from me, but I want to make sure everyone, if you have this and you see it in your mailbox, it should have hit last week, please go ahead and read it. Some good information. And Deputy Supervisor, that's all I have.
Okay, thanks. And before we go to Ian, I'm just going to jump on that and say that, I know folks get mailers from electeds and it's about what they've done, but this mailer is very important for residents because it's packed full of information on who to contact, where to go for our residents. And that's why I think it's such a great newsletter, because it's community focused on how you can get things done or if you're in need of something. So I just want to jump on that and thank the supervisor as well. Sorry, Ian.
No problem. First of all, it was great to see so many people here today, and I understand that the conservation efforts and natural resources are more exciting than our liaison reports, but a few of you stayed. But seriously, I think it's appropriate to thank the library. This is a beautiful space. The room was full. I know the library put a lot of effort in, LTV as well, Kathy Burke-Gonzalez, and donors. We've been here for the last year or so, and it's just, I think it was a sort of proof of how nice that is. The Montauk community came out, and just sincerely thank you for allowing us to be here and making it happen. I also want to recognize that participation is important. As an audience member commented, you don't have to come here. We all sincerely appreciate feedback in any forum that it comes, and it's crucial to democracy and us running the town as best we can. The Ag Advisory Committee meeting is canceled this Thursday. Farmers are busy in July, so that'll be canceled. We'll post that on the website as well to make sure that nobody shows up and misses out, although it won't be as well attended as this meeting was for sure. Property Management Committee meets next Wednesday on the 16th at 4:30. The main topic of conversation, the agenda is not released yet, but will be the Osborne Farm Management Plan. I've referred to this before in my liaison reports, but I mentioned it again just to say that if anybody has any feedback or thoughts about, and this is the 66 Main Street in Waynescott. If anybody has any thoughts or ideas about what that property should look like and how it should be used, please let us know. Obviously, there'll be a formal presentation when a management plan is released, but I'd like to get as much information as early as possible in the process so that we can incorporate those ideas into the plan early. Another sort of rerun on things that I've talked about, the Dodge property, there's board support to move forward with several things there. The multi-purpose path like we have at Duke Drive and Buckskill that are very, very well used. I think we're going to move forward with trying to put one of those in Springs at the Dodge property. We also are moving forward with conducting archaeology on the Mitchell House, which a previous report by Bob Hafner suggested might be a historically significant house where a Native American family lived, and it's been over the years built up, and so we want to sort of peel back some of the layers to investigate the origins there. We'll also move forward with the main house restoration at the Dodge property. And lastly, I want to talk about the same area in Springs. I mentioned this before, that we have in the heart of Springs, it's a beautiful, beautiful area, but we have some parking issues anytime there's an event. I mentioned that I was going to engage outside professionals. I've engaged an engineer to sort of start to lay out what a potential parking area would look like and how we could tuck it away to be as inconspicuous as possible. And just recently, I think yesterday, I got feedback from the planning department and natural resources. So again, I'm voicing this. I've talked with a lot of community members already, but anybody who's interested in Springs and parking issues there and has ideas, I welcome any comments so that I can incorporate those as we move forward. And that is my report.
Thank you so much, Ian. I'd like to talk about the police activity from the police department that we had this weekend. It was a very busy holiday weekend, so these numbers that I'm going to give you are from Friday morning to Monday morning. There were a total of 370 calls for service, 9 arrests, 43 43 noise residential complaints. There were no violations found at those complaints, but one summons was issued for a mass assembly without a permit. There was the noise commercial complaints were 5, and there was 1 summons issued. Town ordinances, there were 16 summonses issued. Traffic tickets, there were 83 issued. Traffic accidents, 14. 80 cases, 41. As you know, the Montauk fireworks had to be canceled because of the discovery of the piping plovers, and I just want to thank, as Tom did, town staff. It's across the board, the work on 4th of July and helping to see if there was a solution that could be found. And the Devon fireworks happened without incident. So those are the statistics for just, again, Friday morning to Monday morning. And so you can see that our police department, our first responders, are incredibly busy keeping everyone safe in the town, on the roads, on the beaches, everywhere. So I just want to thank them again, from the lifeguards to all of the first responders, fire departments, everyone, on behalf of all of us. I just want to update folks on the ditch plains dune restoration. The application has been deemed complete. The public comment period has closed. There were a few public comments that came in. They have to be reviewed as a matter of routine, and then we'll await the permit. When we get the permit, we can go out for RFP for the contractor to install the dune. And I actually heard from Dr. Henry Bukanevich today, who also asked for an update. So even though he's not involved, he's still involved. Also, the grant that I mentioned several times today, that we are in the RFP response process, and the team, which includes Sam Klein, who is here, and other town staffers and stakeholders, is reviewing those proposals, and we're in that part of that process. The Waynescott Citizens Advisory Committee meets this Saturday at 9 a.m. for anyone who's interested at the Waynescott Chapel. And that is all I have, and we'll be moving on now to resolutions. Tom, if you want to.
I have not got any, I've only got up to
None?
the deadline.
Okay, David?
Oh, you're up first.
Oh, I'm up first, okay. So I have resolution 965 is to extend temporary appointment of principal office assistant in the building department. This is for Ann Glennon, and this is resolved that Ann Glennon's appointment to temporary principal office assistant be extended through August 31st, 2025, with no change in hourly rate, effective July 9th, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, I have Resolution 966, which is the approval of special event permits for July and August, and tour of the Hamptons for September 2025. And the events listed below have been approved by the Special Events Committee, but yet need resolutions by the town board. First one is the 29th Annual Montauk Point Lighthouse Sprint Triathlon. Starts at Jim Beach, ends up at Montauk Point Lighthouse, Saturday, July 20th, from 6 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. The next is the Arts Center at Duck Creek, their 2025 music series for the Camilla Cortina Quartet. That takes place on Thursdays, July 24th. July 24th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Next is the Duck Creek 2025 benefit, live music, food and refreshment. That takes place on Thursday, July 24th, 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. There is a rain date of July 27th, 5 p.m. to 8:30. Next is God's Love We Deliver Annual Midsummer Nights Drinks 2025. This is takes place Saturday, July 26th, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Hands Creek Road in East Hampton. Next is the Alexa Wolf Travis J. Field Scholarship Fund, the Travis Field Memorial Softball Fundraiser, Terry King Ballfield on Abraham's Path. This takes place on Thursday, July 31st through Sunday, August 3rd, 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. The rain dates are August 7th through August 10th, same times. Next is the Massapequa Park Bike Club Tour of the Hamptons Bike Rides. This is various routes. It starts at Southampton High School, ends at Southampton High School. This will take place on Sunday, September 21st, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, I have a resolution for moving a URL map access point. This is Resolution 967, and this is where the access point at the intersection of Eau Claire Street and Corbin Street will be moved. We had a public hearing on this that took place, I think, last Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, and this is to move the driveway access to the parcel from Harbor Boulevard to Park Street, with driveway being no closer than 50 feet from the intersection of Eau Claire Street and Corbin Avenue. Except for the above, all of the requirements of the Urban Renewal Map SP1-1 will remain in full effect and force.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 968 is to amend URL map Springs -2-2 and 99E and 110. This is to amend the 19th Street right-of-way. We held a public hearing on this on July 3rd, and this is to realign the road right-of-way on this property.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. It's my pleasure to offer Resolution 970. This is to appoint seasonal lifeguards in the Recreational Department for June 2020.
I have a 969
Did I miss that?
before
Yeah,
that.
there's a few.
I'm sorry about that, Kate.
I got one more.
Go for
That's
it.
okay, David. Resolution 969 is to amend Urban Renewal Map East Hampton 17, 4 and 6 lot line modification. This is another lot line modification. The full details are described in the resolution. We held a public hearing on this on July 3rd, 2025. Except as amended above, the requirements of the URL map EH17 shall remain in full force and effect.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. It's still my pleasure to offer Resolution 2025-970, to appoint seasonal lifeguards in the Recreational Department for June 2025. Names, positions, pay rates, and effective date, retroactive days are listed below.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 971 is to terminate seasonal lifeguard in the Recreational Department for July 2025.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
972 is a set proposal for the National Water Main cleaning for Lowenstein Court. The amount is not to exceed $78,776.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I have Resolution 973, and this is the SMART Team Agreement for the banding of the salt marsh sparrows in Accabonac Harbor. This is giving support for access to town properties and the banding of the salt marsh sparrows at the Nature Preserve this summer in mid-July. Upon notice to the Department of Land Management, resolved that such authorization is contingent upon receipt of fully executed hold harmless and indemnification agreement, sorry about that, in a form acceptable to the town attorney, and that the proposed activity constitutes type 2 action under SECRA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I have two resolutions following the deadline. The first is ID 33077. This is to increase hours for full-time employee Holly Miller. That should be increased to a 35-hour week schedule, an hourly rate of $33.86, annual salary of $61,617 prorated. Effective June 30th, sorry.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Second is Resolution ID 33102. This is to accept bid EH 25028 for food service, kitchen items, and miscellaneous food for July 2025. Melivia Foods of New York and Samtel and Sun Inc. Interborough Packaging, Grady's Team, Pueblo Hotel Supply are the successful bidders.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And that concludes our resolutions for today. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to go into an executive session for personnel and contracts. And we'll start at 3 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I want to thank everyone for coming and attending today and speaking at the podium. And I hope everyone has a safe week. And thank you for coming.